I got that. So includes, but not limited to, serving as a licensing instructor with the InventRight program. Also, as the former director of product development for the toy and game company World Alive. And when he's not busy inventing, look up, because you might be able to catch him in the sky, because he's also a pilot, amongst other things. But if we went through all that, it'd be too much to unpack in 1 hour. So tonight we will be focusing on all of Martin's successes from his licensing journey that took him from being a student with the InventRight community to a coach to eventually the director of a toy and game department. So this conversation is going to delve into some of the strategic shifts and insights that have defined his career. And please, please, please feel free to jot down any questions that you might have. We'll start with just a couple questions that I have and get everybody caught up on Martin's background a little bit, and then open the conversation up for more of your questions and more of a group chat. And let's see what else. Raise your hand if you have a question. You can put it in the chat if you want to. But please try to stay to the end. We'll have a couple announcements for the Innovators Roundtable. And remember, the session tonight is being recorded. So please be mindful of any personal details you want to share. And last but not least, any insights that we share or discuss tonight are based on personal experiences and are not legal advice. So without further ado, let's jump in, Martin. From your time as a student with InventRight, how long did it take you to secure your first licensing deal?
I would say it was probably about a year and a half. I think about a year and a half. Yeah.
So not too long. And I'm guessing you weren't doing that full time.
I was fortunate enough. So my background is really finance and real estate. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and but never was in a position to really be the creative that I really wanted to be. I've been having a journal of being ideas for over, a decade and a half. And it was just, I had the opportunity because I had made enough money to say, well, I can do this full time. And so, yeah, I mean, I went full bore to do this. So, having the time and applying the time is very important,
Yeah, absolutely. I've often heard people ask about the program itself, saying, how long does it take? And it's such a tricky question to answer because there's so many factors that are involved. Are you full-time? Do you have a new child? Are you just moving a house? There's so much involved. How particular are you? And I definitely want to get to that. What your method is, what your technique is. Are you going to do a prototype and a sell sheet and a video and a pitch deck? Or are you just going to sort of jot it down on a napkin and hope for the best? So we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm really curious about your strategy, but before we move on to that, let's talk just a bit about some of the areas that you licensed in. So I'm very unknowledgeable about the Tech D. Am I pronouncing that right? So is that your first licensing deal? Was it one down the line? And can you explain for us what it is really, and why it's not a toy or a game?
Absolutely. That's really a great question. And it tells a lot of the story of what actually got me into toys. So my first invention was the TAC-D, which stands for Tactical Aerial Kinetic Device. And it's really a military and law enforcement drone. It's actually the first wearable drone. It's the first drone that has a taser on it. It's a drone that actually, the drone fits inside of its remote control transmitter, and the remote control transmitter doubles as a holster case that can be carried on a military or law enforcement's side belt in a very convenient way. Highly technical, highly advanced. And what I came to realize starting in the business was that's a really hard to license technology like that. It's very complex. It takes a lot of money. And so to this day, I still do not have a licensing deal for it. I have a granted
Okay.
patent, and I'm working with the military about further development. The thing about it is that it's a completely different animal. You know, when you go to the military, it's more about getting grant money for further
Mhm.
development, and then building teams of scientists and engineers to do it, and then hitting certain milestones, and then they give you phase 2 funds and this type of thing. So it's a completely different animal. It's not like going out and reaching out to a company and you know, in the commercial sense of how we all do it. So it's really, really different. And
Yeah.
but kind of like you were alluding to, and what I would say about this of how it's important is that it took me that concept to realize I really got to dumb this down. This is
Uh-huh.
way too complex. So you need something simple, low moving parts, easy to manufacture, and your odds of success go up dramatically.
Right. Okay. So already there's a billion questions running through my head, which is, I'm sure, no surprise to you. But for somebody not familiar with that type of technology, you just shared that your background is primarily finance and real estate. So how much did you need to know to even get it sort of get the concept together, be able to present it in a way that makes you seem knowledgeable and it is, you know, information that's common to you? How would you even start?
That's a really good question. And you know, I could answer your question, but it would be very high level and maybe a different type of conversation.
Okay.
I'm a student of higher consciousness and being able
Yeah.
to channel information from outside sources of ourselves. And I would tell you that that is probably where that information came from.
All right.
That's a
So
whole other
now
conversation.
that's 70 more different, like, new questions. Um,
Yeah.
okay, we'll leave it at that for now. But again, you guys, if you have questions, you want follow-ups, jot it down. I don't want you to forget. I know we're going to be hitting a lot of different information, a lot of great resources as this conversation continues. So um, we'll leave it there and move on to the toys.
Okay.
How soon after you decided the tactical gear slash drone slash laser slash wearable device was it maybe the most efficient or simplest way to proceed with your licensing goals? Where did the toys come into play?
So, and just to, so I'm gonna just take one step back. So,
Please.
there's a little bit of an understanding on the other product. I also served with the Civil Air Patrol, which is an auxiliary of the United States Air Force, and I actually served as a squadron commander. So I do have a military background, which did lead me into some of this information and being able to discern it a little bit easier. So it's not like I just came completely, you know, from left field. I'm also a commercial drone pilot. So aerodynamics and aviation is something that I've studied a lot and I'm very familiar with. So a lot of that knowledge came into the development of that technology as well. But when you just talk about generally the idea and how that came about and everything else, it's a little bit more. Okay, so stepping into that, into the toys. Um, I love toys, and I think it's something about, you know, making people smile, and it's something about deriving joy to other people. And with that, here's something else that's really important about it too. You know, when you're inventing, and it came to realize pretty quickly that the toy industry is very open to innovation and to inventors such as us.
Yeah.
So it's a true opportunity where normally, you know, you just don't have that type of opportunity. But sometimes, you know, if you work hard enough, you find yourself in a position where you're talking to major players in, you know, it could be Spin Master, it could be Hasbro, Goliath, Moose, any one of these top players. And that's, you know, that's really hard. So when you can invent in an industry like that, that gives that type of opportunity, I think you really have to try to maximize it. And so it was that reasoning, but it was also about making people smile, and then also about being able to develop things that don't need to be very complex and don't
Hmm.
have to have many moving parts and can be easy to manufacture. All of these things that I'm listing, and as you know, Jennifer, there's a bunch more, makes a big difference as to whether or not you're going to get a licensing deal or not.
Right. Right. Um, Martin, speaking of your your background with aerospace interest, I wanted to point out we do have a couple folks in the community tonight that are also in that arena, so you're in good company.
Awesome.
I know there's so many questions in the chat box already that I'm getting very distracted, and I'm kind of losing my position here, but let's just jump right into some of those. So Mike, did you want to ask your question to Martin while we're on the subject here? And maybe
Sure.
share a little about your background quickly for us?
Okay,
Oh,
sure. Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Hey, Martin. Thanks for joining and talking about all this. Yes, my background. I'm an engineer, and I've got 15 years of experience in aerospace. Worked for Pratt and Whitney, designing jet engine parts and such. So really interested to hear everything you're dealing with. That's really cool. And I was just curious with your drone idea. You know, I understand what you're talking about, like with the Department of Defense, that, you know, it's a lot of grant money and stuff like that. But could you perhaps license it to a company like Boston Dynamics that does military stuff, or other types of companies that do a lot of the military stuff that's drone focused?
You can. And, that was the way I started. I started reaching out to, I don't think I contacted Pratt and Whitney, but Raytheon, some of the major players. Actually, there is the Black Hornet. Are you familiar with the Black Hornet? Okay. The Black Hornet is actually a device which is similar to mine, which the Department of Defense spent $360 million in development. And I think they currently run about $175,000 per unit, but it's being used in, I believe, 50 countries around the world. And that device is the first listed reference patent for my patent. So yes, I did go down that road and try to contact commercial companies. One of the major problems you have is they say, proof of concept, show me, show us. Well, it costs a ton of money to develop this, even from a sample standpoint, to the point where they want to get it to. So it was a kind of a decision I made to say, and I'm going to step back here too, because I think this is a very important point. I said, you know what? I would probably be better placed to spend my time developing new and easier technologies in an easier industry, and let this set aside and not spend so much time with it, because I think I'm going to be more likely to be successful, and I'm going to be able to dedicate so much more time to it. Let's put it this way. If I was a one-man idea guy, I may have just stayed with it, and maybe I'd have a deal right now, maybe I wouldn't, but it's years to really get this to the point where it needs to be successful, and to really start to generate monetary income from it. So those were kind of the decisions and some of the reasons that I made those decisions. But I am an idea machine, and that is one of my talents. So utilizing that is very important. So that's kind of, if I answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, Martin, I think I forgot to thank you publicly too. Obviously, thank you. I've been wanting to catch up since the last time we had a chance to go back and forth a little bit, which I think was maybe a year ago or about now. So going back to that time, the last time we did check in, you had just visited a toy company, I think out in LA after, and correct me, you had submitted a game. They liked it. They wanted you to come out, have a meeting with them, and then the next thing you know, a couple more, dozen or so games that have interest, and then what?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, I had an opportunity to pitch a company, which they really liked what I had to show. What it just so happened that they were just rolling out a new brand that they had spent at least $500,000 on. So it was a big deal to them, and they needed new innovation. And the concept is a marble.
Okay.
It's a sphere.
Okay.
And part of the rules are the sphere has to be able to be played as a marble. So no matter what innovation you bring into it, it still has to be marble playable. Well, how do you solve that problem? And it becomes quite a challenge. And I quickly was able to show them at least 6 different ideas that they could use, and they were really impressed, which is what kind of facilitated that meeting. And then me going into further in with them to become their product developer. I did a licensing deal with them for at least 5 different products. Actually, 2 of them I can share with you if you'd like.
Oh, terrific. I'm gonna actually, let me pull you up here on the view so we can all get a really good look at that. Where is it? Here we go. Okay.
So I don't know if you can, if you can see this, but so this is what a marble, but it's light motion activated. So something as simple as that, right, is kind of what they're looking for. And then there was another one that was, can you hear this?
I can't.
Okay, I don't know if in sometimes maybe. So basically, this is a sound marble, and what they did was they had an interest to license with different characters. So what I did was they basically input a Batman character as a freak marble, and so it has a sound, and the way it works is like for 10 seconds, it does a portion of the Batman theme song. So that's kind of how that one is. And there's a bunch of other ones that include like magnets. So they're crazy roll. One is offset. So when it's almost like a boomerang. If I roll it, it just starts and rolls back to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just these type of ideas that they really, really enjoyed. And yeah.
Did you get that idea from a shopping cart with like the bum wheel on it?
No.
So wait, can you clarify again too? Are those the marbles? Are they actually games? You said there's play aspect, like a game competition aspect involved?
Yeah, so the way they do it is they still want to be able to have kids play the traditional marble games. I never really played marbles as a kid. I would just play with them, but not in the traditional kind of game sense.
Yeah.
But there are these specific games, and
Yeah.
they want it to be able to those to be playable like that. So although there's tracks, I helped them develop a freak tracks, which is basically a very unique way. It's not anything you've really seen before. So there's a bunch of different stuff. There's a bunch of different stuff. Yeah.
And then when you initially submitted the idea, that wasn't marble related, right? They liked the initial idea, and then they said, "Hey, we have this new line. Can you come up with some things for that?" Was that the sort of progress?
No, it was marble related. I thought I was in a really tough spot because, to be honest with you, I had an idea of this kind of specific magnetized marble. And then I also thought that it was a perfect opportunity for me to pitch them all different types of products. So when I started the pitch, kind of a Zoom, just like this, I started pitching them ideas, and they were like, "Listen, we're really focused on this brand. We need something like this." And I'm like, well, let me share an idea with you. And I shared this idea with them, and you will never believe what happened. One of our inventors' biggest fears, they showed me the same exact idea. Like, my gosh. And it was like the only one I had, the only marble idea I had. So right there, like Johnny on the spot, I had to just start thinking. And I was like, wait a minute, what if you did this? What if you did this? What if you did this? And they're like, wow, okay, that's pretty impressive. And so then I did some mock-ups of some things, actually marble vehicles. There's a bunch of different things that I came up with. So yeah, but it was about marbles. I didn't think so initially, but then it became very clear very quickly. That's what they wanted.
So with this company in particular, when you approached them, what did that look like in terms of like building a relationship? Was it a trade show connection? Was it a cold, opportunity outreach, as I like to call it, instead of a cold call? And how developed was the marketing material that you submitted for that first interaction?
I would say so. I'm a big believer when it comes to reaching out. I really believe in using the phone and using the phone first. I teach all my students this. LinkedIn has become a very big player for the reach out space, and a lot of inventors are using it. I think the problem becomes they use it as the primary way. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm saying this because I got this through LinkedIn, but my methodology for how to use LinkedIn and truly be successful with it is unique from how most people do it. So for me, I will follow somebody in a toy industry and someone who generally will post a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. I will start to support their posts. I'll react to their posts. I will make comments, never about myself, never about my product, only in support of them. When the moment is right, usually within at least a month and at least 5 to 7 or 10 posts, then I strike. And
Yep.
usually I try to strike in the context of their post and not really even
Yep.
sending them a direct message. So now you have this kind of organic interaction. They already see you as, wow, this is a person. I mean, listen, I don't post a lot, okay? But we'll
No.
know when you take the time to do something, we really appreciate those folks who are, interactive with us. So
Yep.
when you do that on some sort of consistent level, now you've really warmed it up. And now they're willing to talk to you because they may want to even learn something from you. So in this context of how I was able to facilitate the meeting was directly through that methodology.
Okay. I want to add really quickly, even something as simple, rather than doing a thumbs up to like a post, if you're a little shy about doing a comment, choosing one of the other emojis, the light bulb or the clap or support, all of that will help you stand out in my personal experience. And it's just a tiny little fraction, but if somebody has a very popular post and there's 1,000 likes and then 2 hearts, you're like, wait, who did that? And all of a sudden you're kind of like becoming more familiar to them. You're part of their radar. I liken it to welcoming yourself into a new neighborhood. You're not just going to start badgering people and banging on doors, but you might show up at the coffee shop and you might show up at the farmer's market and you might have some chit chat or small talk with somebody while you're waiting for your dry cleaning, that sort of thing. That kind of approach to build the relationships, become part of their environment, become part of their community, so that, it's not totally out of the blue if you do end up reaching out to them, direct email or phone call rather than even a message through LinkedIn. They're already familiar with you. You're already part of the team in a very sort of abstract way. But okay, I want to get to a couple of questions. I know Celeste has a really good one, but before we jump to that, a couple questions really quickly about how you manage to find yourself in the position of the director of the program. So we've heard about different, situations where people wanted or companies want to work with inventors, but not as far as to bring them on into it. I believe it was a brand new position. So was that something that you planted a seed for? Was that something that came out of the blue? How did that come about?
I would say it came out of the blue. I was not expecting it. But you know what? We all either set ourselves up for success or we set ourselves up for failure. And it's really the approach that one takes. And I'm about to say something that I think is the opposite of what most inventors will think, and something that I tell all of my students, which is, believe it or not, when you're pitching your product and your sell sheet, forget about your product and your sell sheet. Forget about it. Just forget about it. Build a relationship. Take advantage of the opportunity that you're there with someone who's an insider who may end up liking you.
Yeah.
And that should be your primary objective. Because the bottom line is that if your product is good enough and they like it enough, it'll stand on its own 2 feet. Now it's, who are you, the inventor, and what are you doing? So we all have talents and we all have pros and cons, right? We have some weak points and we have some strong points. Always be in a position to utilize your strengths when you can. And I happen to be a pretty good communicator. I have pretty good interpersonal skills. I'm a great listener. And I think that goes a long way. Also the mindset, right? This is very important, I think, because it's part of the overall mindset, which is, what does most people do not do, right? Most people oversell and underdeliver.
Yes.
This is commonplace, right?
Yes.
We've all lived it. Well, guess what? If you undersell and overdeliver, you are now standing out. So if you do that by standing out, you do the other couple of things by standing out. The stuff what you said, Jennifer, right? Which I completely agree with. When LinkedIn, that's another point of standing out. So now you create this chain of events, that is completely different. It stands out from anyone else. Now you're in a position of taking an advantage. So I think it really is about building relationships and not being so transactional. And when you do
Mm,
that, good things will happen because good people are hard to find, you
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
we all know it. Everyone in this room knows that.
yeah. And at the end of the day, people hire people they like.
That's it.
So, you know,
That's it.
and so I love what you said about under delivering or underselling and over delivering with your marketing material. Would you say in any way you under um under wait now I under promised but then over delivered with the prototype, or was everything sort of equal standard, high quality? Did you have a very detailed and kind of bells and whistles sell sheet, for example, or did you just hit them with a sizzle video or just show a prototype? So does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And I know
Okay.
exactly what you're saying. And to shock everyone in this room, I had nothing because the truth is I was not developing marbles.
I
I just
missed
took
that
it.
chapter.
What?
I missed that chapter.
Yeah. So I guess,
Pitch with nothing with Martin
well,
Lombardini.
well, listen, I'm not in this case. In this case, so
Yeah.
I don't generally do that. I think it's very important to have very good marketing. It's very, very important. In this case, I think here's the other situation too. You know what? Sometimes the stars align. Okay.
Hmm.
And that doesn't always
Yeah.
happen. But when you stars align and then you create this chain, good things can happen. So in this case, they didn't have a good person in product development. And the person that was in product development was dried up. They didn't have any new
Mm.
ideas. So here's this guy who is really just about creativity and trying to give them ideas and really being ingratiating, but at the same time is throwing amazing ideas and novel ideas at them where they're like, wow, we should give this guy a shot.
Hmm.
Which facilitated me being able to go to LA and then doing a pitch, which I had some time to build some of that material, but
Yeah.
not to the tune like I would normally do,
No
because
3D renders or
no, not
okay.
in this case. No, no. Well, there were some accessories
Hmm.
to the tracks that I was able to bring in, which I did have very nice 3D renders. But again, it was about using my imagination because I was developing other products, had nothing to do with marbles or freak tracks, but then using my imagination to say, wait a minute, this could be utilized for this. Let me see, let me test the
Mm,
waters and just show it. And
yeah.
it did.
One of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is the sort of approach of having at least a couple ideas for each company you want to reach out to, like tailored ideas, so that when you do have that time, that face time, if you are so lucky to get your foot in the door and the first product isn't going to work because maybe, like you said, they already have one that's coming to market next week and it's the same thing, to be prepared with a second product ready to go, even if it's not exactly in that category. Um, the closer, I think, the better, but to show that, a little bit more about your range, what you are able to come up with, more about the way your brain works, how you think about things. And so I really want to encourage, maybe other people to consider doing that as well. And Martin, with this company, obviously you hit a home run, found yourself in a place you never thought you'd be. Were there many other companies that said no first? How many companies would you typically be reaching out to when it came to your toy designs?
A lot, a lot. I think it's important to leave no stone unturned. I think
Yeah.
it's important that when you have a hit list, it's structured in a way where you have you know I guess phase one, phase two, phase three. And so what are the primary ones I'm going to reach out to first and why? Then there's a second group and then there's a third group. And then you revolve back around if you didn't make
Yeah.
contact. I think it's very, very important. I mean, I will tell you, it's not uncommon for me to have up to 125 companies on my hit list that I'll be reaching out to on any one given product. And
Wow.
I think that's important. Something else I just want to add, Jennifer,
Yes, please.
you said something which I think a lot of inventors do it, but I don't think they spend enough time. And what you actually said is one of the most powerful things an inventor can do to set themselves up for success
Mm,
Take the time to review a company's line, see what it is. If you do that, they know it and they appreciate it. And
yes.
they really, really do. They really, really do. And I think that's almost like a secret that us inventors don't do enough of, because it's really, really important. One other thing I'm going to throw out there, which I learned from a prolific inventor when I started, I found out about this guy who had, I think he's licensed 150 deals in a
Wow.
10-year period,
Wow.
mostly to Hasbro, Spin Master, Goliath, all the big names. Okay. Of course, he's not a one-man show. He
Okay.
works in
Yeah.
teams and groups, and you know how that
Yeah.
works, Jennifer.
Yeah.
As you evolve, that's kind of how it works. But he told me something which I never forgot. And it was so special, especially when you're dealing with the big guys, which is this: big companies want you to capture movie magic in the toy.
Mm,
Capture movie magic in the toy. If you can do that, your chances of success go up dramatically, because now you're tying in advertising, you're tying in a license, you're tying in all these type of things. So if you
right.
spend more time doing that, and then also spend time doing what you were talking about, Jennifer, which is like, just go and look, what are these
Yeah.
lines about? How can you expand on it? You're really going to improve your odds of success.
And I'll quickly just piggyback, Martin, because I recently I was listening to a podcast, two gentlemen talking about their entrepreneurship journeys, and one of them had recently put out a job posting. And of I think the 50 applicants he got, only 3 of them even mentioned the company, let alone being a fan of the company or being, a fan of a particular product of the company. So yeah, okay. I I could ask you a billion questions till the cows come home, but I'm gonna get to Celeste right now. So Celeste asked about hearing you expand upon keeping a journal and also the mesh movement in games that seems to be gathering momentum, checking toys for their mental, emotional, social, and health aspects. Would you care to talk
Okay.
about that a little bit, Martin?
Sure. What was the first part of the question?
So expanding on keeping a
Journal.
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 Journal. Okay. I think
Thanks,
it's very
Celeste.
important. Yeah, I think it's very important to keep a journal, especially if you create a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts. It's so easy to forget
Yeah.
these concepts, and I think for me, they bubble up at any time of the day. It could be at night, it could be during the morning. It's anytime. I think writing those down is important, and at least it gives you the initial concept. Okay, if you don't just write a whole page of every part and what it is, you
Yeah.
still can kind of do that. I have an analogy, which I think I will use to this, but it's also about how to be more creative.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you generate more ideas?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it has to do with being in your childhood, and how many of us in this room can just take a moment and remember a day when you were a kid, maybe playing with a toy, having an exciting moment in time. I almost liken it to, if you go to a forest, okay, and you've never been to this forest before, and you walk in, you could easily get lost. You may not be able to find your way back out the way you came. So what do some people do? Well, if you imagine, if I took a string, if I had this really long string, and as I walked, I tied it, kept going a couple of feet, tied it, and I did this, I could always follow the string back to the original point I came from. It's almost like doing that in your mind to your childhood in a lot of these things. And by creating these connections, an easy way to find your way back, you can really stir up a lot of imagination, a lot of ideas, and a lot of stuff like that. I think it's an important concept that I wanted to share. So that's that. And then the mesh that you were talking about. Honestly, I don't think of it in those type of terms. I guess when I think of a play pattern, I think about those things, um, but not so much. It's almost like sustainability. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard about this, and I actually was working with a gentleman who does a lot of stuff with Disney, and I'm redeveloping a flying toy for him. But he said, it can't be styrofoam anymore because the original material is styrofoam. It has to be highly sustainable because Disney's moving in that direction. So we start to hear these terms and these directions that, trending. But really what ends up happening, if you talk to toy insiders, no matter how much a company wants that highly sustainable product, when they see the price point,
Yeah.
80% of the time they go with the cheap one and the one
Mhm.
that's plastic and isn't sustainable. So there's so little room for that. And I think that if we get too caught up in some of these trending matters, we're really doing a disservice to ourselves. You know what? Keep it simple. And also, here's something else I think is really important too. What is evergreen?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about, yeah, anyone can come up with a great idea and anyone can get a licensing deal tomorrow. Okay, guess what? But how long is that product going to sell? How long is it going to take before any one of these toy companies move it off the shelf? You're not making any money anymore, and it could be within a 3 to 4 year period, and your product is done. But if you spend some more time thinking about play pattern, think about what is evergreen, right?
Yeah.
What are some evergreen things?
Yeah.
Bubbles. So I develop products that are in the bubble space, soap bubbles. This
Mhm.
is an evergreen thing. If you wanted me to, if I could share screen, I could actually share with
Yeah,
you
please.
product.
Let me make sure I have it set up, or you can give it a shot. I might have to do something here. It should be good.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna bring this up real quick.
Okay. While you bring that up, Martin, is there a particular age group? I mean, I know there's kids of all ages that play games. So now you're talking bubbles and marbles, which may be a choking hazard. We're looking at maybe two different age groups there. Is there one in particular, a certain window that you tend to design for?
No, no. I actually, if I would say anything, I tend to stay more away from the really young kid stuff
Hmm. Okay.
because I think it's I don't know. Yeah, you have these choking hazards. The marbles
Yeah.
are actually specifically designed to be 33 millimeters, so
Okay.
they won't fit down your throat, and
Okay.
that all was based on their safety stuff.
Got it.
Okay, so I'm gonna share this with you. See here, where is it? I'm just gonna do this. You guys can see my messy screen here.
We're gonna have to talk about that, Martin.
Yeah, yeah,
How do you find anything?
yeah. Am I sharing screen right now? Can you see
Yeah, we
this?
see a cornhole shootout.
Okay, exactly. So this actually, they just did a piece on it in Toy Insider. I did a licensing deal with this, but once again, part of the concept here is something evergreen. Cornhole
Yeah.
is a major product and it's very popular. Basketball has been around forever and a day and it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. So in this case, this was a way of putting two very popular games together in one and killing a couple of birds with one stone. Okay, so
Mhm.
it's a game, it's a product that has a unique play pattern, which has never been done before, but at the same time, it's two games in one. So I can still play basketball or cornhole with it individually or apply a new type of play pattern with it. So this is
That's
just
great.
one example of utilizing some evergreen type of things.
That's
So,
great. Martin, I have one more question, and then I want to hear what everyone else wants to contribute. But again, a year ago, wouldn't have pictured this was the conversation we'd be having now. And I'm wondering, in a year from now, any idea what your daily routine might be looking like, what your title might be, what sort of you have in store, or what you can't even imagine might be in store?
uh, yeah, I think it's always important to leave things up open enough
Mm,
where you can expand. I just want to say something because I think it's important. This is really psychological, and if you get to know
yeah.
me, anyone, you'll realize that for me, everything is a mental game. Everything is psychology.
Mm,
It's just how I operate. Okay, but this is really important, and I found this out a long time ago. When you talk about where are you be next year, where are you going to be 5 years from now? I would give everyone an advice. Okay. And that's including you, Mike, right? Because you're an aerospace engineer. And this is what I would say. Never define yourself. The moment you
mm,
define yourself, you create a ceiling. Even if it is the president of the United States. The president of the United States can only go so far. So he is
yeah.
a ceiling. Is that good enough? Or would you like to rise above the planet and be able to look down and see what's going on and seeing that actually past, present, and future all happen in one space? So never define yourself because by defining yourself, you start to put caps on your mental capacities. So I would just throw
Yeah.
that out there. I think it's very important. Okay, so what's in store over the next year or so? Well, actually, I'm making plans to actually starting a new toy company, which I'm working on, which will be including a bunch of different products, but always with the mindset of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the other thing, which is really, really important to me, is you will never really see me, I mean, unless it's just obvious, right? I still don't think it'll ever happen. It's always going to be novel. Something to me is very important about being original. You don't just, I take this product and I just added a hook to it. Oh, well, great. Well, you know what? But listen, I'm never going to knock the person who, can make $1 off that, because you're still doing something and it's still hard work. But for me, it's really about being novel and unique. And I really think that I spend so much time doing that I really want to have a toy company that's just different, and the other thing I would say about this too is the opportunities that I got working as the director of product development for this toy company put me in a position to negotiate with Chinese factories, which 3 years ago, I was like, I would never send anything to China because, they're going to steal your ideas. You need to know people. You need to have contacts. Well, now I've built that up. So it's you, once again, you're just kind of utilizing every skill that you learn as you move forward, but doing it intelligently.
That's so very exciting. We cannot wait to see what you come up with, the undefinable toy company of Martin Lombardini. So congratulations on all of your success this far, and looking forward to much more. Who has any pending questions that I've missed in the chat? Does anyone want to offer any thoughts, or did I see a hand? Whose hand? No? Let me see. Okay, you guys, there's John. John, what's going on? How are you tonight?
Hi, pretty good.
Good.
Hi, Martin. Also, everybody. I love what you're saying about well, so many things, but that creative process. I'd like to add one thing that to that, and I know, journaling, part of it, going back to childhood. The other thing that I think is for me is magical is whatever you're working with, do something, like, especially so you take the elements that are somehow related to your area of interest and you just start playing with them. You put them together, that's what children do. You got a pile of sticks, just play with them and see and so you're doing the play, you don't know where you're going with it, but it's because that really it integrates it with your neural process, your mind, your subconscious. It activates it. So, and even if you get nowhere, you just mess with it. So journaling is part of that because you're actively writing something down. That's really important. And but the actual physical process, because if you just think about it and you think about it and you think about it, you're really in a loop. And it's not bad, but it actually tends to run in a loop. And you're probably all familiar with that idea of how often you got the great idea and you think about it more, and all you've done is convinced yourself that it's the best idea in the world, and then you actually try to do it, it falls apart very quickly. And that's a disappointment. But actually, that process might really open up the thing that's going to work.
John, John, listen, I want to say I agree with you 1,000%, and I do exactly that. So I wanted to develop ideas once again with the mindset of evergreen. Well, magnets there's magic to magnets. And if you take two magnets with the same polarity and you start to do this, they pull apart, and you don't see how that's happening. And there's magic in that. And I spent months with magnets next to me and playing with them in my hand. And sure enough, I came up with a whole series of fidgets based on that concept. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I practice it. Absolutely, John. That's absolutely right.
That's funny you should say that, because magnets are one of the, I do the same thing. I love magnets. They are instantly magic, and and I got a series of little things that capture some of that. So that's a good one. Everybody get a bunch of magnets because they'll immediately throw you into the magical space. Even you're just playing with those, like you said.
Absolutely. What's a funny story too? Just because it has to do with playing, and everyone in this room, I guarantee you, has done what I'm about to say. Okay. Has anyone here ever played with bubble wrap?
Yep.
You pop it, pop. So I was playing with bubble wrap, and I was like, there's got to be a way to turn this into a fidget, into a toy. And someone came up with the idea before I did, because you know the popper thing that
Yeah,
you pop,
yeah,
push.
yeah.
It's the same thing. It's literally
Yeah.
the same thing. I would not be surprised if the inventor spent a month or 3 months or a year playing with bubble wrap before he came up with that idea, because it's literally just a perfect extension of that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. I want to add too, going back to Ed Garton's visit when he joined us a couple of weeks ago, about creating and playing before bed, especially when your mind's a little not 100% there, not 100% asleep yet, that in between space, that doesn't have the pre-existing boundaries on ideas yet. That's great, John. Thanks for that. Bubba has his hand up. Bubba.
Hey,
Oh,
thanks.
and then Shad, I'll get to your question. I know you have one in the chat. Bubba?
Thanks. Hey, well, a few things. I wanted to say, I noticed through the conversation that we actually, Martin, we have a few things in common. One of the things that I'm working on is I have a patent on a wind turbine, the array primarily, the blades and everything. There's videos on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
But actually, for all the aerospace guys, if you have any interest in that, I'd love to get people's thoughts on that. But wondering if you are open to conversation with other stuff. I have like a number of toy ideas and things like that. And I went through the Invent Right program. Kurt Hughes, if I'm saying his name right, yeah,
Yep.
was my coach. I didn't get anything licensed as of yet, but I've got some, finished cell sheets and pitch materials. But just wondering about maybe getting some ideas on, where I might go with what I already have.
Okay. Well, just really quickly, to make your life easier, and I don't know how many folks in the room do this, but I'm sure we're all somewhat familiar with ChatGPT. I am not a big believer. This is really funny. I actually am an anti-technology person. Sounds weird, right? I think there's a balance to everything, and I think that we have to recognize these balances. However, ChatGPT can be a great resource. I use it primarily for generating lists of companies. You can go to ChatGPT and, once again, based on whatever your product is, say, what brands would be good for a product like this, or start to use some keywords based on what your concept is, what it does. Obviously, I don't know, so it'd be a little bit difficult for me to say that, but you do know. So just check out ChatGPT, do some searches, and literally, you just put in there, list 50 brands for a product that would be a good fit for this. And it will spit it out in just a couple of seconds. Now you have something to work with. And I think what's really important, okay, and part of success in the inventing process, whether we like it or not, is reaching out. We have to continue to reach out. We have to be persistent.
I totally agree with you on that. And my favorite thing is, I am not one who's afraid to use the phone.
Good.
But for some reason, I just have a hard time finding the phone number to the people I need to contact.
Have you heard of Hunter.io? And I think the other one is Rocket Reach.
I have heard of. I actually had heard of the Hunter one. I have not followed up on getting into it.
There you go. Actually, Shad put in their Zoom info, which is actually another good one. He just put that down in the chat. I would definitely open up your chat and check that out as well. Here's something else I would tell you, Bubba. Once again, that's a good question to ask ChatGPT. If I need to find the phone numbers of particular companies or people in companies, what are the best websites to do that? It'll tell you. And I would assume, well, I wouldn't assume, I would assure you that there's probably at least a handful that are free.
Yeah, I need to learn to use ChatGPT.
Yeah,
I have another friend
100%.
been telling me about it. My other friend's been telling me about it, and I've been dragging my feet on ChatGPT. I've got a terrible procrastination infliction.
Don't sleep on ChatGPT, Bubba. You're missing out. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Martin, yeah, you be sure to let us know if and when the time comes that you are open to outside innovation. I'm sure you have a huge stack of toys and games ready to go that are going to occupy your time for the near future when you get the company off its feet. I want to add one more thing when you mentioned about playing with your materials. Another thing with playing with your prototype too, I think people sometimes get caught up with the idea that they have to come up with like the prototype. And what I would like to offer is come up with a prototype, play with it a little bit. It doesn't have to be the prototype. Expect to make a few different iterations of it before you have the one that you're going to present to companies. Make it, play with it, make sure it does what it's supposed to do. But anyway, Edgar.
Cool.
Oh, you guys, I'm sorry, we are running very, very close to the hour here. So Martin, I don't know if you have a couple minutes, but we might run a couple minutes.
We'll run over a little bit. It's okay.
Thanks, Martin.
Okay, the experience that Martin just shared with us in LA reminded me of something I've been thinking about. And when we pitch, we have to think really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think, we're considering the people in front of us, executives from toy companies or whatever sector you're involved in. We're considering them judges, judges of our inventions, who try to see if to try to use different parameters, like see if it fits their line of products, et cetera, et cetera. But are they really judges, or are they curators? An example. For example, when a waitress approaches you at a restaurant, she might say, chicken or beef, right? Chicken or beef. And she doesn't start with, we have all those recipes of chicken and it's organic chicken and all this stuff. So as inventors, I think we need to change our perspective and consider all these persons, all these former judges, curators. So like Martin did in LA, hey, what about this idea? And what about this other idea? And what about this really different idea, this really novel idea? And then the curators, then they responded, hey, your third idea I liked. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you like the chicken, right? Okay, so here we go. Chicken. We have chicken with mushrooms. We have vegetable chickens and all stuff. So I'm working on a LinkedIn post to more or less illustrate and expand on this idea. But and this is based on something I heard this morning through Ed in April. But yeah, I think we have to change our viewpoint and not consider them judges but curators. Hey, you want chicken? Or do you want beef? Thank you.
I agree. I think it's a lot of wise words there. I think that, and I think here's the other thing I think too, when we're pitching to companies, we need to, like I said before, not be so transactional and be more in the moment and just read the room and here's what's really important, right? Be passionate about your product. If you don't believe in your product and you're not passionate, no one else is definitely going to be, right? So as long as you're transmitting that, you're passionate, you believe in your product, but at the same time, you're not overwhelming them with this. It's more about, what do you think? Or, how would you do this differently? Or, I'm open to collaboration. Or, I think all of these things, let's not be so worried about, they're judging us, they're thinking about us. We're just there to, build a relationship with someone as best as we can. What is what got us in the door is this product, the sell sheet, and that got us this far. So let it stand on its own. Just be able to, listen, having said all that, you always have to be prepared, right? So I'm never going to say, oh, just go in there and wing it. No, be prepared. No, anticipate questions if and when you can. But I would almost say it this way. If you're a great actor, okay, you think of the greatest actors that you've ever seen, okay, whether it's Harrison Ford or whoever it may be, right? Great actors know their lines. They memorize their lines. They know them very well. But guess what happens? When they're in front of the camera, they forget their lines. Now it's natural. It just comes. I'm not worrying about what's my line, right? You just flow. So you have to kind of be that way. Get yourself prepared, get yourself ready, and then just let it flow. Don't worry so much. And if you actually have that mindset, it'll work.
That's great. I would add to that, do have like a 1-sentence description really well memorized so that you can repeat it, so it is really easily digestible for them, so you don't miss any of the main features that you really want to sort of nail down. And then there's always room for the follow-up conversation, but to try to have that main descriptor really nailed down so that you don't have to think about it at all. It just rolls off the tongue, and they can memorize it quickly because you've said it a couple times, you've repeated it a couple times. Again, kind of like joining the neighborhood. It's now that product, now that concept, now that benefit has become part of their vocabulary in a way. Shad has asked, and then I want to get to Mike, and then we have a question from Christopher about IP, and then we'll wrap up here. But Shad, what are your top 3 resources that have been the biggest benefit in your inventing journey?
What was the question? Top 3 resources?
Yep. When I read that comment, I thought you were saying that we were your top 3 resources, Shad, and I almost cried. But no, he was actually asking what your best resources are. You mentioned thinking sort of esoterically. There's something about that, an author, a course, something that's helped you open your mind to these outsider influences. Or
I would say this, that's a really good question. And I could actually throw a question back at you, and I could say, do the resources you're talking about, are they including the individual? Because if they are, I would say my number 1 resource is myself. And the realization, and I know this may sound, to some people, it sounds a little out of this world type of stuff, but if you truly believe it and you understand it, then you understand that it's not. But here's the reality, okay? So everyone understands this. The only thing between you and what you want and anything in life is the imagination to think it, and B, the will to do it. That's it. If you want to complicate life anymore and whatever, it's all BS, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. So when you understand that, you understand a main factor, which is this: anything you will ever want to manifest outside yourself, you will find inside yourself first. So if I want $1 billion, I'm not worried about looking outside, I'm going inside. And when you go inside, you'll figure it out, and then it'll manifest on the outside. So I would say that perspective is probably my greatest resource of understanding, because that is the foundation for all the other things that end up happening. Now, if we're just talking technically type of thing, I would say networking, because here's the reality. It's like we were talking about at the beginning of the session, people want to work with people they like. People want to work with people they're interested in. And sometimes it even means challenging people. And, how many times have you gone into a pitch and then challenged the person? But do it right. Do it where they're really interested in what's going on, and that creates a really buzz. So I think, I think you're more apt to be successful when someone likes you, okay? Because it's not always about I've seen it. I've seen a brilliant idea and someone not get a deal because of them. They're too difficult to work with. And no one's going to deal with that, because it's like, wait a minute. If I got a problem with this inventor today, what's going to be like when I negotiate royalty rate, or when, I got to pay them and they're going to be on my butt 247. They're just not going to deal with it. So I would say network yourself, networking. And the other thing I would say, and I don't know if this is a resource, because once again, it comes from inside of you. You have to be persistent. You have to be persistent. Any person you will ever see in anything they've ever done in life that is successful never gave up. That is a fact. The people who win are the ones who don't give up. That'd be my advice.
Love
Yeah,
it.
no, I appreciate it, Martin. Thank you so much.
You got it, Shad.
Thanks, Sean. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment because earlier we were talking about how to come up with great ideas. And I find for myself, I've really kind of noticed this in the last couple of months, that if I don't think about it, if I don't think about the problem, I don't think about a solution, I just like kind of like let go. The best ideas like pop into my head. It's just absolutely amazing. So what I find is that I have to like sit down and like read about different problems, and then somehow that's just in my subconscious or something. I'm not thinking about it. And all of a sudden it's like the universe, whatever you want to call it, the universe,
Yep.
spirit,
Yep.
God, whatever. It just comes into you. And it's just like when I come up with the ideas myself, it's like, yeah, they're okay. But when they come from the universe, wow, then they're like magical. So
That's
just
it.
kind of want to mention that, and then the thing is, what I find is that you have to write it down, because that way you don't think about it, right? Because if I don't write it down, then I'm like always thinking about it, and then I don't have new ideas coming. So it's like the trick is to just let go and write it down. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. But thanks again for everything you're saying, Martin. It's just it's awesome. Absolutely
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely. And Mike, I agree with you so wholeheartedly. That process of letting go is so powerful. Okay. And I'm going to challenge everyone in this room with a life experience that they've had on their own, which directly goes to what Mike is talking about. Okay. And I want you to ask yourself if this has ever happened. You remember the time you really wanted something? Okay. Maybe you were working your butt off to get it. Maybe it was in a relationship. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was something very specific. And it just didn't happen. But at some point, you're like, you know what? Screw this. I'm done. I'm just not going to think about it anymore. I'm over it. And within a month and a half, what you wanted, you get it. Because it's that letting go. And that's exactly what Mike is talking about. You understand what the problem is. You've thought about it. You've internalized it, but now you just let it go. And you just let it go. And then the good things will happen. So I know that's happened to me a ton of times, and I'm sure it's happened to a bunch of people in this room as well. So Mike, spot on, my man.
I
Yeah,
can
thank
share.
you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. And just one more thing in terms about letting go is that I find that when you have an idea and you want to have the market like accept it, and you're talking to different companies, and I can see how that can raise fear for a lot of people. But what I'm starting to kind of discover is that if you let go and just recognize that, hey, I'm really helping a ton of people here. And this is not about me making money. This is about me helping a ton of people. And it just like shifts the thinking. It's kind of like the glass either half empty or half full. It's the same thing, but when you think about it in terms of focusing on other people, the benefit you're giving them, it's just a different mindset. And it's just kind of like, wow, it's like I want to get up every single day and do everything I possibly can to help people. And that's like a great thing that we're doing here by using our ideas to help people. It's just amazing. So I just think this is fantastic. So
1000%,
yeah.
1000%. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree. Okay, because I mean, think about it. When your mindset is, I want to make $1 million. I want to make $1 million. Because really what you're talking about, Mike, is remote intention through the manifestation. This is really what you're talking about. Because now you're sending a message out into the universe of saying, what is my intention about this? And it's one that's pure of heart. That is power. That is literally power. And we all as humans have to understand that we actually have these abilities. We have to be more in tune with them and be more aware. And when we are, and then we bring them into our day-to-day life, even in this industry, good things will happen.
Thank you so much. We'll have Christopher, and then we'll get to Keith, and then we'll let you move on to some other things. I'm sure you probably have 12 more things to do tonight. Christopher, did you want to chime in, or I can read it for you? While Christopher's joining us, I'll take this opportunity to announce that he is joining us again next week. We'll hear from Mr. Christopher Cooper himself about his journey. But for now, what's your question for Martin?
Yeah, hi, Martin. Thanks for coming on tonight. You're in Franklin, Tennessee. I'm actually going to be out that way later on this year. I've got some friends that live in Franklin, and I'm going to visit them. I'm going to make a road trip all the way to Tennessee.
Awesome.
From LA. From LA.
Are we connected on LinkedIn?
Probably not, but we will be by then, I'm sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Yeah, I'm actually on my way to Ohio, but they've invited me to stop at their place, which is always so exciting. So,
Awesome.
But my question was about your IP process. How do you protect your ideas on your own as well as when you were involved in the firm?
Okay, so that's a really great question. IP is really, really important. I think that, some companies, you'd be surprised. I've dealt with companies that it was the end all be all. And it became a situation where I negotiated like the royalty rate. If we file a non-provisional and we haven't been granted yet, but yet we're in the midst of getting a licensing deal, this can come up, and it can even happen where, they say, well, we'll still do it and we'll pay you 4%, but if it's granted, we'll give you 5%. So they kind of use it as a negotiating. And then other companies I've dealt with never even mentioned a patent on the licensing deal. So it's like, it's incredible. So it happens every which way in between. What I do personally, I think it's very important to protect yourself. So I will file a PPA on everything that I show before I show it. NDAs are super, super important. So if I don't have a PPA, like for example, when I was dealing with this company on the fly and I'm just throwing ideas from, here to Timbuktu, I'm making sure that I'm having an NDA in place. And then file a PPA after the fact, if need be, depending on what ends up happening, or if I feel it's patentable enough. But yeah, applying protection is very, very important, and I do it generally most of the time. And I know that, believe it or not, a lot of very successful people in the toy industry, they don't do that very much. It becomes, once again, relationships. And here's something else I do too, and this is something which is really cool about building relationships. If you can build some relationships with some industry insiders, like someone like me, where I've gotten to become like an industry insider now, where before I wasn't, I was looking for people like me, that you build a relationship with, that I can show this person. I can just contact Martin, or I can contact Ken, or I can contact Louis and say, hey, Louis, check this out. What do you think of this? Does this have legs or does it not? And then they give you feedback. And then you can kind of discern whether or not, hey, maybe I should protect it, maybe I shouldn't. So, and once again, I think that also goes to what you were talking about, Chad, about using resources, which once again, that goes to show about the network, because then you can bounce ideas off people. But yeah, generally speaking, always protect yourself.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Christopher.
You got it.
Okay, last but not least, Mr. Keith Lawrence.
Hey, thank you. Thank you both for this meeting tonight. My comment was just kind of in the same vein that Mike was talking about, and Martin, you've touched on, but I heard a speaker talk about this whole idea of development and holding how we hold our ideas. And one thing that resonated very much with me was her comment that, once we kind of start iterating on solutions as we do, and sometimes we fall in love with the first one. And her admonition was focus on the problem, not the solution. And until we've really come up with as you said, a novel solution to the problem.
Absolutely. And what I would add to that, Keith, is that I never, I would say with a capital N, go in with a product that's always a standalone. I usually have any one idea will probably have at least 3 to 6 variations of that same exact idea. And what we'll do is when we start the pitch, we start with A, we feel them out. But wait a minute, we got B, we got C, we got D, we got E. And we were able to really, and then once again, this also shows the credibility of the person, their imagination, and the fact that they can, what they may not know is that I've already figured these things out, and it's not on the fly, but then they don't necessarily realize that. So I think having iteration is very important, and I think it's important during the pitch. And the other thing to remember too, in going with this, is that all companies want line extensions. So you're usually much more likely to be successful if you have at least 3 iterations beyond the original one, so that you can show legs. And then, well, wait a minute, yeah, there's more ideas here, so we can create a whole line from this idea. So yeah, great point, Keith.
Love that. I want to point something out that's sort of prevalent tonight in some of your backgrounds. I've mentioned this a few times before, but I've encouraged people to change the background of their Zoom display, because like Martin said, the networking is so important to your success. And as we can see, Christopher, for example, he has his Airstream behind him. And for some of you, you may or may not know, but that is Christopher's area of product development. So Airstream accessories. And we had a situation recently where, because somebody showed their interest, their category of interest, not their product, not their concept, but just their category of interest, one of our other community members was able to connect them with somebody in that category that could help them get a licensing deal. So I would really encourage you guys, again, going back to the neighborhood analogy, if knocking on LinkedIn doors is you're welcoming yourself to the neighborhood, I would encourage you guys to use this opportunity when we are in a group together, or you are on other Zoom calls, to treat your screen here, your background, like a storefront. So, now you're part of this community, you've opened shop, and people can start to understand where your interests are. And likely there's very little overlap in our immediate community, in our core group here. So I wouldn't worry about that. But again, knowing people that are in the same categories, that presents opportunities for you guys to reach out to each other. But then also, you don't know who knows who. There could be somebody that's in this group right now that's working in that category that you're developing in. But how would they know if you're not sharing it in some way? So my 2 cents on that, but you're not here for me, you're here for Martin, and so am I. And I'm so thankful for this conversation. You've given us so much to think about. This is going to be one of those videos that I think all of us will watch numerous times. Thank you again, Martin, for being here, for taking the time. I'm so excited for you and to see what the future, holds. And please just keep us posted. And any other thanks for Martin, a great way to show him some appreciation, send a couple endorsements his way. Another thing too with the networking, it never hurts to support your other community members. Send out endorsements. You should be doing that at least a couple times a week. It only takes a couple seconds. It makes you look good. It makes that person look good, and helps build our professional standing in the community. So I'd really encourage you to do that. Martin, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I would just say I think that's really important what you're talking about, and it also comes back to paying it as Benjamin Harrison would say, pay it forward. You don't have to worry about whether or not this person ever endorsed you. Endorse them. And if you do the right thing enough times, it comes back to the love comes back. And I think that's important. So I completely agree. And Jennifer, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to talk to you and to your all the attendees here. Please don't be strangers. You can find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect if we're not already connected. And I always love talking to all the inventors in the community and being as much of a help as I possibly can.
This was terrific. It was really fantastic, Martin. Again, thank you so much. Expect to have a busy inbox for the next few weeks at least. I apologize in advance for that, but anybody else that has any questions, any interest about other speakers for our group, you know how to reach me. Please join us again next week. We're going to hear from Christopher Cooper, and he's joining us with a really interesting story about why he's not licensing and why he decided to start his own brand with 20-some products under the Cooper Products label. So we're really excited to hear from you, Christopher. Thank you in advance for being with us next week, and for everybody else for joining, for your participation. It means the world. If it wasn't for you, it'd be me just talking to myself in a corner somewhere probably. So thank you for making this a conversation and not just my own muttering. And I can't wait to see you again next week. And also keep in mind, every Thursday, for the near future, at least 8 p.m. Eastern time, either guest speaker or a coffee and catch-up session. And those sessions are not recorded in order to provide folks the opportunity to speak a little bit more publicly about their product, but still remaining sort of tight-lipped at the same time. So with that, I wish you all a wonderful week, and thank you again, Martin, and take good care.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks,
See you, everybody.
guys. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Wesley, thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining the new folks. Stay tuned for the recording. Let's see here. Elliot was here. Did he leave already? Elliot? All right.